Artemisia Gentileschi was born in Rome in 1593, daughter of the painter Orazio Gentileschi, a disciple of Caravaggio. From childhood she grew up among brushes, oils, and the rigor of Renaissance workshops, a closed world where woman was scarcely a shadow on the margins of male genius. But Artemisia did not inherit only her father's technique. She also inherited his hunger for truth. She learned to look at light like Caravaggio, not as an ornament, but as a revelation. Her life, however, soon became a battle between art and injustice, between voice and silence. When at 17 she was raped by the painter Agostino Tassi, a friend of her father, the event marked her destiny forever. The judicial process was cruel and humiliating. She had to endure torture to prove her innocence, while her aggressor barely received punishment. That pain, instead of breaking her, became the seed of a work that would defy her time. From that wound was born one of the most ferocious, intense, and transcendent paintings of Italian Baroque, Judith beheading Holofernes. The scene that Artemisia painted around 1620 in Florence leaves no room for ambiguity. Upon a bed covered with sheets, a man struggles uselessly while two women hold him. Judith, the biblical heroine, grips with both hands a broad sword and with surgical precision cuts the neck of the Assyrian general Holofernes, symbol of the enemy and tyranny. At her side, the faithful servant Abra helps her keep the condemned man's body steady. From the wound bursts a torrent of blood that soaks the linen and stains the tunic. The scene is of absolute violence, but also of moral clarity. There is no sadism, there is justice. Light enters diagonally and settles upon the women's faces, which show neither horror nor doubt, but a serene concentration. There is no theatrical heroism nor hypocritical pity. There is determination. The subject comes from the Book of Judith, an apocryphal tale of the Old Testament that tells how a Hebrew widow, with cunning and faith, infiltrates the enemy camp, seduces the general Holofernes, and beheads him while he sleeps, thus saving her people. The story was represented countless times in European painting, but never with such intensity. Before Artemisia, Caravaggio had painted his own Judith and Holofernes, where the heroine appears as a fearful young woman who leans in with repugnance at the act. Artemisia turns the story around. Her Judith is an adult woman, strong, self-assured. She does not execute by mandate, but by conviction. In her face there is no fear, there is purpose. That difference is essential. The painting does not only represent a biblical feat, it embodies a symbolic revenge. Many scholars have recognized in Judith's features Artemisia's face, and in Holofernes those of her rapist. If this is true, and the comparisons suggest it, the painting is a catharsis, a confession transformed into art. It is not a crime, it is a reparation. Artemisia turns the sacred scene into an act of personal and universal justice. The sword's edge is her brush, the blood, her word. The composition is a marvel of balance and dynamism. The bed in forced perspective leads the gaze toward the exact point where steel cuts flesh. The diagonals of the arms and of the sword form a cross, as if the sacrifice also had a spiritual meaning. The red color of Judith's mantle contrasts with the white of the sheets and the black of the background, creating a symbolic tension among purity, passion, and death. The palette is austere, dominated by ochres, browns, and deep reds. Every tone breathes humanity. Technically, the work demonstrates Artemisia's mastery in the use of chiaroscuro. The light does not come from a visible source. It is interior, almost moral. It illuminates justice and leaves tyranny in shadow. The anatomical realism is impeccable. The muscles of the arms, the resistance of the male body, the pressure of the female hands. Everything suggests direct observation of the human body, something uncommon in an era in which women were forbidden the study of the nude. Artemisia defied that norm and learned with her own body as model. Every stroke is the fruit of experience and daring. The work was painted during the artist's stay in Florence, when she was just over 25 years old. There she was received into the Accademia delle Arti del Disegno, being the first woman to do so, and she began to work for the powerful Medici family, probably the patrons of this painting. Since then, the picture remained in private collections until it entered the Uffizi Gallery, where it is preserved today. There are other versions of the same subject, such as the one at Capodimonte in Naples, but this is the most perfect, the one that best synthesizes her language. The historical context amplifies its force. In the Baroque, art was an instrument of faith and propaganda. Images had to move to provoke devotion or fear. Artemisia used that language of contrasts, light and shadow, body and soul, horror and grace, to tell her own truth. While her contemporaries painted ecstatic saints and resigned martyrs, she chose a woman who fights and wins. Her Judith does not suffer, she acts. The symbolic elements multiply. The knife or the sword in Christian art usually represents divine justice. In Artemisia's hands, it is also a symbol of inner power. The torrent of blood, far from being grotesque, is purifying. The crimson color does not stain, it redeems. Abra, the servant, represents sisterhood, the union among women in the face of violence. Together they carry out the act that men fear and that women remember, that of breaking silence. For centuries, however, her voice was silenced. The history of art, written by male chroniclers, reduced her to the category of curiosity or biographical footnote. They spoke of the raped woman painter more than of the Baroque master. Only in the 20th century was her figure rescued from oblivion by scholars and historians who understood the depth of her work. Artemisia was not an exception. She was a pioneer. She opened a path that centuries later other women artists would travel, who saw in painting a form of resistance. The restorations carried out in recent decades returned to the canvas its original brilliance. The pigments regained intensity, the anatomical details recovered precision. Investigations with X-rays and ultraviolet light revealed changes in the composition. At first, the sword was in another position, and Holofernes' face was less visible. Artemisia corrected it to emphasize the instant of the blow. Restoring the picture was almost a symbolic act, rescuing the artist who for centuries had been made invisible. The contemporary impact of the painting is enormous. Today, Judith beheading Holofernes is read as a manifesto of empowerment, a work that transcends religious art to become a universal symbol of resistance. Judith's gesture, firm and concentrated, embodies the determination of one who has decided not to be a victim. The work has become an icon of feminist movements, a book cover, and a constant reference in debates on the representation of female power. But beyond social interpretations, the painting remains, above all, a masterpiece of art. The way Artemisia controls light and form, the emotional intensity and technical precision, place her at the height of the great geniuses of her time. It is no accident that she has been compared with Caravaggio, although her gaze is different. Where he sees death, she sees justice. Where he sees sin, she sees redemption. The picture is also a lesson about the human condition. In it, horror and compassion, violence and beauty are mixed. The blood that runs does not provoke revulsion but astonishment. Judith's gesture does not instill fear but respect. Artemisia does not paint the cruelty of the act. She paints its moral meaning. She forces us to look at what we prefer to ignore, that justice sometimes is born of pain. To contemplate this painting in the Uffizi is to face the naked truth of the Baroque. The scene seems suspended in time, as if the sword never finished falling. The viewer feels the weight of the steel, the metallic smell of blood, the silence after the blow, and in that silence resounds Artemisia's voice, not that of a martyr, but that of a creator who turned her wound into an immortal work. Her legacy goes beyond the history of art. It represents the victory of voice over silence, of talent over prejudice. Her brush did not only narrate a biblical episode, it founded a new way of looking. After Artemisia, art was no longer an exclusively masculine territory. She opened the door with the same strength with which Judith brandished her sword. Today, Judith beheading Holofernes is not only a painting, it is a mirror. Each generation contemplates it and discovers something different. Some see justice, others vengeance. others redemption. But all recognize the truth that Artemisia left on its surface, that of a woman who refused to be silent, and while the gallery's light touches the sword's edge, the blood seems to keep flowing, reminding the world that art, when born of pain and courage, never ages. The symbolic force of Judith beheading Holofernes is not exhausted in its brutality, nor in its personal history. It is a manifesto of spiritual and human baroque, a mirror of a world that began to totter between faith and reason, between guilt and freedom. In the 17th century, Europe burned under the wars of religion, and the power of the Catholic Church tried to recover its authority by means of images that would move, that would show suffering, martyrdom, and redemption. But Artemisia went a step further. Her painting does not seek the spectator's compassion, it seeks his shock. It does not paint another's pain to inspire pity, but the inner courage that challenges the established order. In times when woman was an instrument of devotion or of sin, she turned her into protagonist, into executioner, into bringer of justice. Every brushstroke of the work is charged with theological and psychological meaning. Judith does not act in the name of personal vengeance, but of a higher moral force. Her fixed gaze, her measured gesture, her almost ritual calm evoke the idea that the violent act can also be a way of restoring the world's balance. In that apparent paradox, the paradox of bloody justice, lies the Baroque spirit, the human soul divided between light and darkness, between divine reason and earthly passion. Artemisia understood that dilemma like no one else because she lived it in her own flesh. Her biography filters into her palette. In her youth, after the scandal of the trial, she was sent by her father to Florence, perhaps to remove her from Roman gossip. There she found a different society, more refined but just as rigid. Nevertheless, her talent soon drew the attention of the Medici, who recognized in her a force comparable to that of the great masters. Artemisia was not only a virtuous painter, she was an intellectual. She corresponded with Galileo Galilei, with writers, musicians, and philosophers. Her studio became a place of gathering and debate. In that environment, she conceived Judith beheading Holofernes as something more than a commission, as a declaration of principles. In the composition, the bed becomes a theatrical stage, the sheet a curtain, and the blood a text. Everything is arranged with narrative precision. Holofernes does not die from a clean blow. His agony is felt, his body still resists, his hands try to grasp the sheet in a last defensive gesture. Artemisia does not choose the moment before nor after the murder, as was customary, but the exact instant when the blade cuts the flesh. That choice transforms the painting into a physical experience. The viewer does not attend as observer but as witness. The picture vibrates, breathes, trembles. There is in this representation a fundamental difference from the masculine models of the time. In the versions by Caravaggio or Tintoretto, the woman is usually an instrument of divine will, a beautiful body that performs a terrible act with modesty or repulsion. In Artemisia, by contrast, Judith acts with full awareness and authority. She needs neither approval nor redemption. She is an autonomous moral being. This radical reinterpretation of the biblical story is what makes her a pioneer of a feminine gaze upon power. Where others saw sin, she saw dignity. That dignity is reflected in the details. The firmness of the arms, the synchrony with her servant, the concentration of the gesture. There is no lust nor vanity, only justice. Artemisia painted female power not as an object of desire, but as a subject of action. Her Judith is not a muse, she is an author. And in a century when women could not write their history, she wrote it with paint and with blood. The autobiographical character of the work is undeniable. Modern research has shown that Artemisia used her own face as a model in many of her female figures. Comparison with her self-portraits reveals identical features: the line of the jaw, the broad forehead, the concentrated gaze. Likewise, anatomical studies have identified in Holofernes the features of Agostino Tessi, her aggressor. This is not accidental. It was her way of exorcising him, of killing him symbolically with the power of art. Turning him into an image, into a defeated enemy, was her true vengeance. The anatomical realism, which in Caravaggio was brutal, and in Rembrandt spiritual, in Artemisia is moral. The blood that flows from the neck is not scandalous, it is necessary. It is the price of justice. The modern spectator, accustomed to visual violence, may forget how subversive this was in its time. In a society obsessed with decency, showing two women executing a bloody act was a challenge to the very structure of patriarchal power. Art became her court of law. For centuries, critics tried to soften the impact. They said that Artemisia imitated Caravaggio, that her intensity was the result of her father's influence. But modern technical and stylistic analysis has shown the opposite. Her brushstrokes are more controlled, her chiaroscuro more dramatic, her anatomy more rigorous. There is no imitation. There is evolution. She carried Caravaggio's to its most human point. The painting's profound message is revealed in the contrast between colors and emotions. The white sheet, symbol of purity, is dyed red, but red does not represent guilt, it represents action. Judith does not fear getting stained. Abra, the servant, does not avert her gaze. Both women embody a new iconography of courage. In Judith's face there is no ecstasy nor fury, only concentration. It is the look of one who has decided to do what must be done. The black background absorbs light like an abyss, reminding the viewer that human justice is fought in the darkness of existence. The bed, stage of desire and death, becomes an altar of moral sacrifice. Every element seems to have a double meaning. The weapon, instrument of violence, becomes a cross. The body, symbol of weakness, becomes strength. And blood, sign of sin, becomes sacrament. The restoration of the work, carried out in the workshops of the Uffizi between the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st, revealed layers of oil that had remained hidden beneath yellowed varnishes. Infrared analyses showed that Artemisia changed the position of the sword and the arms several times to achieve an exact balance between strength and harmony. Traces of the preparatory drawing were also discovered, firm and decided, without hesitations. Nothing in the picture was improvised. Every millimeter answers to a calculated emotional and narrative architecture. Today, as one walks through the room where the work hangs, one feels the living presence of its author. It does not seem a painting of the 17th century, but a contemporary work, urgent, necessary. Artemisia painted not for her time, but for all times. Her Judith is a universal symbol of resistance, independence, justice. Modern readings have made her into a feminist icon, but her meaning transcends labels. It speaks of all beings who have been oppressed and who seek redemption. It speaks of the power to transform pain into creation. It speaks of art as the language of the soul when words are no longer enough. Artemisia not only changed the history of painting, she changed the history of courage. In the academic sphere, Judith beheading Holofernes is analyzed today as a milestone of Baroque realism and psychological symbolism. The tension between physical drama and emotional restraint makes it a masterpiece of Baroque balance. In it, body and spirit merge into a single image. Blood does not scandalize, it purifies. The act of killing does not degrade, it liberates. To contemplate it up close is to witness a wordless prayer. The dense brushstroke, the gleam on the steel, the reflection of light in the drops of blood, the silence that envelops the room, everything seems to move between dream and revelation. The painting does not tell a story, it makes it present. It does not show an action, it relives it. And when one lingers before Judith's face, one discovers the serenity of a soul that has understood its destiny. There is no rancor in her eyes, there is clarity. That calm is Artemisia's true revolution, turning violence into inner peace, the wound into understanding. She does not paint hatred, she paints redemption. Thus, Judith beheading Holofernes is not only the work of a woman who broke barriers, it is a portrait of humanity confronted with its shadows. It is proof that beauty can be born of suffering, and that truth, however painful, always has light. And while time keeps turning, Judith's sword remains suspended in the air, still falling, still carrying out the justice that history denied its author. Artemisia Gentileschi remains alive in that arrested blow, in that serene gaze, in that blood that does not dry, because each generation looks at her again and finds in her its own reflection, that of the soul which wounded dares to create.